Fellow travelers on this intricate journey called life, have you ever felt the stinging pain of disappointment in someone's eyes? Not just disappointment, but that cold, stark realization that they've given up on you? Perhaps it was a teacher, a friend, a family member, a spouse, or even a system, a society that simply wrote you off, labeled you, and moved on. The world, my beloved, can be a harsh place, quick to judge, quicker to abandon, and quickest of all to forget. But today, we are going to dive deep, for 4 expansive hours, into a story that challenges that very notion of abandonment. We are going to witness a life that, by all accounts, should have been lost to the shadows of despair, a life that every human agency, every loving connection, every hopeful institution seemed to discard. But this is not a story of despair, my friends. This is a story of an unwavering, unyielding, undeniable force that, when all others walked away, when every door slammed shut, when every light flickered out, refused to let go. This is the powerful, soul-stirring testimony that everyone gave up on him, but Grace, oh, sweet Grace, Grace didn't. So, open your hearts, quiet your spirits, and let this truth penetrate the deepest parts of your soul. For if Grace didn't give up on him, then Grace will never give up on you. Our journey begins with a young man, full of promise, full of potential. Let's call him Ethan. Ethan was not born into privilege, but he was blessed with a sharp mind, a quick wit, and a charisma that drew people to him. As a child, he was bright in school, a natural leader on the playground, and the kind of son every parent dreams of. His teachers spoke of his untapped potential, his parents beamed with pride at his achievements, and his friends looked up to him. He had dreams, big dreams, the kind that shine brightly in a young person's eyes. He envisioned a future where he would make a difference, where he would build something great, where he would be a force for good in the world. He was the golden child, the rising star, the one destined for greatness. He went off to college, full of ambition, ready to conquer the world. For a while, he excelled. Dean's List, leadership positions, a bright future seemed assured. His parents, who had sacrificed so much for his education, spoke of him with reverence, their hopes and dreams intertwined with his own. His professors saw a spark, a unique talent that set him apart. His friends admired his drive, his ability to juggle academics and a vibrant social life. He seemed invincible, standing on the precipice of a brilliant career, a life of impact and fulfillment stretching out before him like an open road. But life, my friends, is not always a straight path. Sometimes, there are unexpected turns, hidden pitfalls, and moments where the brightest lights begin to dim. For Ethan, the descent began subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. It started with small compromises, a little too much indulgence, a gradual loosening of the disciplines that had once defined him. A missed class here, a neglected assignment there. The pursuit of fleeting pleasures began to overshadow the pursuit of his larger goals. The charisma that once drew people to him began to attract the wrong kind of attention, drawing him into circles that celebrated recklessness over responsibility. The first ones to give up on him were often the ones closest to him, the ones who had loved him longest. His parents, heartbroken and bewildered, saw the changes. They tried to intervene, to reason with him, to remind him of his dreams, of their sacrifices. But their pleas fell on deaf ears, replaced by a growing chasm of misunderstanding and resentment. They tried tough love, they tried gentle persuasion, but nothing seemed to penetrate the hardening shell around his heart. Slowly, painfully, their expressions of hope morphed into weary sighs, their conversations filled with a quiet despair. They still loved him, yes, but the faith they once had in his chosen path, in his ability to fulfill his promise, began to wane. They couldn't see a way back for him. They had given up on the Ethan they once knew, the Ethan they had poured their lives into. Then came the friends, the ones who had shared his laughter and his dreams. They watched him spiral, offering advice, a helping hand, an outstretched arm. But as his choices became more destructive, as he pushed boundaries and broke trust, their patience wore thin. The late-night calls for help turned into desperate pleas that went unanswered. The promises to change were broken again and again. Eventually, even the most loyal among them grew weary. They started to distance themselves, not out of malice, but out of self-preservation, out of a recognition that they couldn't save someone who seemed determined to destroy himself. The invitation stopped coming, the calls became less frequent, until silence filled the space where camaraderie once thrived. They had given up on him. His professors, the ones who saw his potential, eventually shook their heads in disappointment. Missed deadlines turned into failed courses. Brilliant ideas remained unrealized, replaced by apathy and missed opportunities. The once bright spark dimmed, then seemed to vanish altogether. They wrote him off, not with anger, but with a quiet regret, marking him down as another promising student who lost his way. They had given up on his academic future, on his potential to contribute to his field. Ethan, in his deepening darkness, felt each abandonment, each withdrawal, like a confirmation of his worthlessness. He internalizes the reject irons. The voice in his head grew louder, echoing the sentiment he felt from others: "You're a failure. You're not worth it. You'll never amount to anything." He began to believe it. He started to drift, moving from one low-paying, dead-end job to another, his once sharp mind dulled by substances and despair. His appearance began to reflect his internal chaos. He became haggard, unkempt, a shadow of the vibrant young man he once was. The sparkle in his eyes was replaced by a haunted emptiness. The spiral continued, picking up speed. Addiction, like a relentless predator, wrapped its insidious tendrils around him, tightening its grip with each passing day. He lost his jobs, one after another, his reliability and performance eroded by his dependency. He alienated anyone who still tried to help, lashing out in frustration and self-pity. He became entangled in legal troubles, petty crimes, desperate measures to feed his addiction. Each arrest, each court appearance, served as another public declaration of his failure, another mark against his name. Society, in its formal and informal ways, began to give up on him. The legal system, designed for justice and rehabilitation, saw him as another repeat offender, another statistic. The judges saw a criminal, the probation officers saw a lost cause. They processed him, sentenced him, moved him through the system, but their eyes held no hope for his future. The community, once proud of its golden boy, now saw him as a menace, a cautionary tale. Doors that were once open to him now slammed shut. He was judged, condemned, and ultimately discarded. He ended up homeless, living on the streets, his only companions the cold pavement and the biting winds of indifference. He was invisible to most, a nuisance to others, and a spectre of broken dreams to himself. He remembers shivering under a tattered blanket in an alleyway, the sounds of the city a distant hum, the cold biting through his thin clothes. He looked up at the vast, indifferent sky, and for the first time, truly believed he was beyond help. He was forgotten, abandoned, worthless. He cried out, not to God, for he felt too far gone for prayer, but to the empty air. Is there anyone out there? Does anyone care? The silence was his only answer. Even the echoes of his own voice seemed to die without reaching anything or anyone. He felt completely alone, utterly beyond saving. Every single person, every single system, every single hope had given up on Ethan. But my friends, this is where the story truly begins. Because it was in that very moment, in that deepest, most desolate pit of human abandonment, that something miraculous happened. It wasn't a booming voice from heaven, no dramatic flash of light. It was quieter, subtler, yet infinitely more powerful. It was the whisper of grace. As he lay there, shivering, broken, and utterly despairing, a memory flickered in his mind. A faint, distant memory of a sermon he once heard, years ago, about a love that never fails, about a God who pursues even the lost sheep. He had dismissed it then, thought it was irrelevant to his bright future. But now, in the utter darkness, that memory resurfaced, not as a judgment, but as a faint, almost imperceptible warmth. It was like a single, tiny ember, glowing in the ashes of his ruined life. He didn't understand it, couldn't explain it, but it was there. He felt a pull, a quiet, insistent tug at his heart, a feeling that defied his cynicism, his despair. It was the persistent voice of grace, not a voice of condemnation, but a voice of invitation. It wasn't telling him what he should have done, or how he had failed. It was simply saying, I'm still here. I haven't given up on you. The next morning, something was different. The weight of despair was still heavy, but it was no longer crushing. The cold still bit, but a flicker of internal warmth had ignited. He didn't know why, but he felt an inexplicable urge to move. He stumbled to his feet, driven by a force he couldn't name. He walked, aimlessly at first, his body aching, his mind foggy. He passed a soup kitchen, a place he usually avoided out of shame. But today, something drew him in. Inside, he found not just food, but a kindness he hadn't experienced in years. A volunteer, a gentle, older woman, offered him a warm smile, a cup of coffee, and a word of encouragement. She saw not a homeless addict, but a human being in pain. She didn't preach, didn't judge, didn't give up. She simply offered a quiet, consistent presence of compassion. That simple act of kindness, that unwritten warmth, was grace in action, a tangible manifestation of a love that had not given up on him. Ethan, still skeptical, still hardened by years of rejection, found himself returning to the soup kitchen each day. He started small, helping to wash dishes, then sweeping the floor. It was hard. His body was weak, his mind battled the cravings and the echoes of self-loathing. There were days he wanted to give up, to retreat back into the familiar darkness. But each time, that gentle presence of grace, manifested through the kind volunteer, through the quiet strength he found in himself, pulled him back. He began to listen to the stories of others at the soup kitchen, people who had also fallen, who had also been discarded by the world. And in their shared vulnerability, he found a glimmer of connection, a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. He realized he wasn't alone in his brokenness. Grace began to sustain him in unexpected ways. A small, unexpected job offer came his way, sweeping floors in a local shop. It wasn't glorious, but it was honest work, and it gave him a sense of purpose. He began to attend a recovery meeting, hesitant at first, but drawn by the honest sharing and unwavering support. He started to talk, slowly at first, then with increasing honesty, about his past, his struggles, his despair, and in that vulnerability, he found healing. The road back was long, incredibly arduous. There were relapses, moments of profound discouragement, times when the old temptations roared in his ears. But each time he stumbled, grace was there, not judging, not condemning, but simply lifting him up, offering a hand, a new beginning, another chance. Sometimes grace came as the steady voice of a sponsor. Sometimes it was a timely word of encouragement from the soup kitchen volunteer. Sometimes it was simply the inner strength he found when he thought he had none left. Ethan learned that grace doesn't always remove the struggle, but it provides the strength to endure it. It doesn't magically erase the past, but it gives the power to build a new future. It doesn't make everything easy, but it makes everything possible. He began to understand that even when he was at his lowest, when he felt completely unlovable and unworthy, grace was relentlessly pursuing him, patiently waiting for him to open just a tiny crack in his hardened heart. Slowly, painstakingly, Ethan rebuilt his life. He regained his sobriety, not perfectly, but with unwavering commitment. He found a small apartment, then a better job. He reconnected with his family, not as the golden child, but as a humbled, transformed man. There were tears, apologies, and a slow, painful process of healing old wounds. They saw the change in him, a depth and a humility that had never been there before. They realized that even when they had given up on him, something greater had not. Ethan's life today is a testament to the prevailing power of grace. He doesn't have the same dreams he once had of wealth or worldly recognition. His dreams now are far richer, far deeper. He dedicates his life to helping others who are lost in the darkness he once knew. He volunteers extensively at the very soup kitchen that first offered him a hand, sharing his story, offering hope, being a tangible expression of grace for others who feel abandoned. He speaks to groups, to schools, to churches, about the depths of his despair and the miracle of his transformation. He stands before you now, not as a perfect man, but as a redeemed man. He still carries the scars of his past, but those scars are now badges of honor, reminders of where he's been and the incredible journey he's taken. He understands now that when everyone gave up on him, it wasn't because they were bad people, it was because their human capacity for hope is finite. But God's grace, oh, God's grace, is infinite. It never runs out. It never tires. It never gives up. His story is a living, breathing sermon that whispers this profound truth into the chaos of our lives. No matter how far you've fallen, no matter how many people have written you off, no matter how many times you've failed, grace has not given up on you. Grace sees you, not for your mistakes, but for who you truly are, a beloved child of God. Grace pursues you relentlessly, even into the darkest alleys of despair. Grace offers a hand, not to condemn, but to lift. So, my friends, if you are listening to this, and you feel abandoned, if you feel discarded, if you feel like everyone has given up on you, I want you to hear this truth reverberating in your soul. Grace hasn't. Grace is still knocking. Grace is still calling your name. Grace is reaching out to you right now, offering a fresh start, a new beginning, a love that never fails. Open your heart to it. Allow it to find you in your darkness, just as it found Ethan in his. Because when grace steps in, hope is reborn, and a life once written off can become a living testimony to the power of unconditional love. Let us